Hey guys, it is Ivizonix, and today I want to teach you all how to use Aiocallback and everything it has to offer, and why I wrote the library, what I hope you will be able to get out of this, and ultimately how we're going to make trace config better right over here, which is something that I have planned to integrate into aiohttp because AO signal apparently is going to be deprecated. So anyways, let's get into, I guess, a bit of a tutorial about how to use this library. Now, to get started, we need to figure out how to install Aiocallback. This is actually pretty simple, but should be pip install Aiocallback. Otherwise, you could also, if you have UV package manager, I know that's really popular, you could do that. We recently just had an update where now Aiocallback is going to be able to run with data classes, which should actually make things a whole lot lazier. And as you're going to find out, this is the whole goal with Aiocallback, make things as lazy as possible. So there we go. Something you're going to find out is that this library has a bit of a fast API experience where we're trying to keep things as simple as possible. So if I were to make a class called debug, and if I were to import attrs, I'm going to use attrs in this case, but you can use whatever data class library you honestly want. But I'm going to import a couple of things, but first I'm going to teach what an event is. Now, an event is a callback that doesn't pass any context variables. It doesn't pass the debug class onto it, but what it will pass are the parameters. So, in my example here, I'm going to create an event called, I'm going to think about this, on, prepare. So, let's just say we are going to prepare to send something, or we're going to do some sort of asynchronous logging. We can, create an event that specifically is going to do that. And in this case, we have set up what's called a member descriptor. Now, a member descriptor is similar to that of like a property or an item. You probably have seen member descriptors used in libraries like SQLAlchemy, which is an example of where you could find them. And there are a couple of other libraries that use member descriptors, but in my case, what I have done is I have managed to figure out a way to define certain attributes. So in this case, we have defined that on prepare, the event is going to send a message. And here's where the black magic comes in. Just that when we want to use debug, we could have just set up an init right here. I just am too lazy to do that. But you can pass like custom context variables if you want. You can pass whatever you want actually. And something you will find is that the personality of this library is very similar to Discord PY, where it has a callback, and you can create a wrapper actually. So if I were to create a wrapper right here and say on prepare, if I were to do that, it will work because the event wrapper has defined that this will send a message because it is using an event wrapper, which if we go to the code, you'll see that the event wrapper is like a modified version of AO signal, just with some added features and functionality, which I added because I thought that using append on just functions alone, I thought that was just rather, I guess, awkward. especially considering that most modern data class libraries tend to wrap functions and whatnot. So that is why I created a event wrapper or decorator around the event wrapper. And now what it's going to do is that this callback will now be appended to our debug class that we created. So now I could print out the message, I could log it. In this case, I'm going to do something dynamic. I'm going to say log and then message. You can use these multiple times. They are not limited to just one function. And yeah, I'm going to just demonstrate that you can do this multiple times. Now, maybe I could just have it print out the message. But basically, you can add on as many events as you want. You are not limited to one event, which I think is pretty nice. And, anyways, let me get on to, like, maybe an actual example of this. And try and run this one first before I can give a real-world example of where this could be useful. Now, let me send off debug. And here comes the magic. Here comes the part that I really wanted to implement that Aiosignal does not have. And that is what we call send. You will see that right here, it will define message for us. This is something that Aiosignal does not have. This is something that I wanted to implement so that users will be able to not have to second guess what the heck we're sending off. Because this can be a problem if I were to check out Aiosignal right here, which is that you can see that it's doing a bunch of redundant property calls and a bunch of data classes actually. And then it's shoving these into a thing and sending it. It was my belief that basically that all of this could just be chopped off. Like, we don't need any of these sends. Like, having just trace here is fine, but I think that all of this can go, if I'm going to be completely honest. But anyways, back to the tutorial. Sending with Aiocallback 1.5. Although it's actually 0.1.5. There we go. That's good. Now, we're going to use an event loop. In my case, I'm going to import win loop. You can use whatever async IO thing you want. I think Trio also works. I haven't tested it with Trio yet, though. But I just happen to be the developer of this library because, well, let's face it, async IO originally for Windows was complete shit. And I am not holding back my words when I'm saying that. But anyways, I'm going to run this. I'm going to run main. And you're going to see that this is going to call twice. So let's do just that. I'm going to call this twice. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot to await it because it's asynchronous. There we go. One other thing you got to remember with this library, and this is important, remember to freeze your callbacks. Always. Always remember to freeze the events before you send them. There we go. And as you can see right here, now it has sent off. It's probably a good thing I tested it without all that other stuff so that if anybody gets stuck, now you'll know why. You need to remember to freeze your events. Funny enough, I am also the developer of this library too. I just thought it was a good idea to, make a tutorial. but I guess we'll figure out a real world example of where this could, be utilized, because there's so much more to this library that I have not even scratched the surface yet. So I'm gonna write a another one of these, but with some more stuff to it, and provide a real world example. So I have created another thing, another file. Here was the old one. But now we're going to get on to where this actually starts to become rather useful. In my case, we're going to use HTTP bin as a test, and we're going to try and send back a user agent. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to use aiohttp for this, since I think that's because that's also the library I'm planning to make changes to in the future, so that hopefully internally and externally aiohttp will be better, because it will use a library hopefully that's not deprecated and is maintained. So I guess we'll name this HTTP bin debug. So something cool about this library is that you could probably use this for debugging. Another idea I had would be for Discord PY to start using Aiocallback as well. But those are just like some of my ideas. But anyways, let me write an event, and we're going to call this one on start. So this will run before sending the request, for instance. So I guess we'll do something like what we had before, maybe. And then another event that I think I want to add is on user agent. I'm going to just do UA for short. Now this does return none, so we need to remember to make sure these events remember that they are none. There is nothing to them. Now we might want to add a context variable, and we are going to use attrs. I'm going to make sure I define that. But maybe we want to, add maybe some sort of variable to this. Maybe x is an integer. Or you know what would be cool? What if we got it to do benchmarking? We could, yeah. You know what? I think I have an idea. Let's change this, let's show this with benchmarking. So I'll add async IO. Maybe we could add a loop. That would be cool. Yeah, abstract event loop, and then we'll optionally make this none so that I can set the event loop later. But my idea behind this is that you can create whatever you want with this. Now that I think about it, let's not pass an event, because then this context will not pass. So I think I'm going to be getting to a little surprise here. But there's a thing called a context event. And it sends a class holding the event through the callbacks made except for the wrapper itself. So in this case, what I'm defining here, because I wrote this library, is that now we can make it so that these events will send self along with it. So now I'm not just sending one thing, I can send multiple. So I think that's really cool. So now we're going to make it end. And maybe we could just have on end do this and on start do another. And I don't think we need to send anything. We're just going to test it with sending itself off so that I can demonstrate using the event loop. But anyways, let me do that. And now we can get on to the fun stuff. So I could say http bin debug. And then I could do that. And just so that we could be really creative and really lazy with this, I'm just going to send it through this. Right here, you could send it through main, you could do whatever. But I think it's a pretty cool idea if I just sent it through here so that I could set the event loop right away. So in our case, we need to get our event loop. I don't get what's with these weird star things. I feel like that's new. Okay, so we're gonna just get the event loop and then, but this is a real world example of how you would create like a context variable, if you will. And then we could send on start. We could just send it off. Now, something unique about this is that it's sending inside of the function, the class function or class method. I think I'm going to name this to get user agent. But now we can send off the event, and it will pass through self for us. And then we can perform what we want to with aiohttp now. So let's create a client session. As client.get. And I'm pretty sure you all know how to use aiohttp. So I'm not going to go too in depth on this part, since I would at least assume that you have at least some intermediate experience with libraries like this. I always like to use context managers around everything so that everything remembers to close. Await response.json. Okay, so here is our data, and then we're gonna send the user agent that comes from the API response back to us from on user agent, and then we're gonna send it, and you'll see right here that it does define what it is that we're gonna be sending, and then we can await self dot on end. We're gonna send that, and then there we go. And then that's how you would write like an internal library for everything. Now I can define a main function. And let me make sure too that I write an example event on start. Something interesting too is that I also made it so that you could have like a example of how to use something. You could also do this at a lower level, like I've demonstrated here with an event wrapper. But anyways, let's get back to this. We're gonna call this start. You can name whatever the function you want. Just remember that it's gonna send the class itself. You could also name it self. You can name it debug. You can name it whatever you want. I'm gonna just call it self for this video. But here we go, and then We've already, at this point, we've already set the event loop, so we don't really need to worry about the other stuff. So now that we have the event loop, we can actually like get the time. There we go. So that we can actually do the benchmarking. And I'm going to add 2 more variables to this. We're going to add a start variable. It's going to be a float. End variable, which is going to be a float. Actually, I don't think we need an end variable, just a start. I'm going to do that as default. And then we're going to talk about freezing after this. Run. So now we can write the other callbacks we want. Something unique too they could also do is that if you don't want to use the context somewhere, you don't have to use a context event. You could always just use an event. I think I'm going to change this part of my example. Mainly to show that you don't have to do certain things. You can always try to do the minimum required. But it should show us the aiohttp version next to our user agent. And then, well, on end, we could share our benchmarks. I'm going to say print benchmark. And then, now what we could do is we could actually subtract the start time from the end time. And that will be how long it took to run this. And then we could print total run time from start to finish. And now comes the fun stuff. Now, it can be annoying to freeze all 3 of these, so I'm going to show a different way of doing so. I've created a specific meta class / collector that deals with needing to freeze a bunch of these, because I don't think you want to freeze like 3 of these at a time. I don't think that's going to be useful. I think it would be very annoying for someone to have to write, you know, like a freeze function yourself, like that, and have to freeze everything. So something that event list is going to take care of is all of that. It's going to find all of these objects. It's going to freeze them all so that we don't have to worry about that. So now we could see that freeze shows up. It is there. It has been defined for us thanks to the event list. And now that we have everything done, we can get our user agent, run our program, and be done. And like in my previous example, I'm going to use when loop. You can use whatever thing you really want. You could use UV loop if you're on Linux. Use trio. But anyways, I'm going to run all of this. It should work. If it doesn't, then it means I screwed something up, but it should be very easy to fix as this is not very much code. And this is something that I'm planning to talk about at the end of the video as well, which is how I'm going to change the trace config. On how I'm planning to do it. Weird. That is very, very weird. Cannot send non-frozen events. I thought we froze it. Because as we can see here, the object gets the attribute, and then it freezes it. The one thing to mention is that this library is not fully mature yet. It does have a few bugs here and there, but I'm hoping that in the future it won't have so many bugs. This is something that WinLoop actually had before, where it had a few sneaky bugs, and eventually they were all found and patched. But anyways, let me try this again. And I'm gonna try debugging this too. Another thing I added to this library was the ability to see the events. Oh, that is weird. Doesn't even tell me what it's using. This is stupid. Oh, I see why. Anyways, there's a bit of technical difficulties, but hopefully I will get it patched. This is funny. This is very funny. Alright. Well, basically, I'll show what Freeze is doing under the hood since it's not working right. But what it should have done is it should have iterated through all of our events and froze them. But for right now, I'll do this. But hopefully in the future, you guys will not be experiencing this. But it seems for me I'm going to have to patch a few things. And there we go. And there's our benchmark. Anyways, that is it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Hopefully we'll get freeze fixed here in the future. I don't know why it didn't work. But, that is it for me. Hopefully, we'll fix our side of things, and then eventually the goal, the end game for me, is going to be getting rid of all of this fluff and replacing it with our own library, and possibly making it so that this function can disappear, and that the goal is that all of these can be type hinted and predefined, so that hopefully the traceconfig API will be made better than what it was. Anyways, that's enough of me rambling. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully I'll get my bugs patched, and I will see you all in the next video. Well, it does work in some contexts, event list. Before I actually leave, I wanted to show that this does work and that we can run a benchmark. It's just that some data classes are currently buggy, but that I am trying to patch those bugs up. So I'm gonna try this now with the with this setup, and you will see that it does actually run correctly if I get rid of attrs. But hopefully I will get this patched in the future, because I don't know what's going on. with that library in particular. But anyways, now I'm actually done. Thanks for watching.